Most contractors don't start losing money in the field. They start losing it the moment the estimate goes out the door because the number is incorrect. And when that number's wrong, the pain only gets worse with time. Today, we're digging into why estimating is still more art than science, how great contractors protect margin before the job ever starts, and where training, not just technology, actually moves the needle. My guest is Chris Clausing, Director of Program and Curriculum Innovation for Construction at Colibri Group, where he develops licensing and certification programs for the construction industry. Chris is also a former general commercial contractor with 25 years of real-world experience, and he's seen firsthand how bad estimates quietly kill good companies. If you want tighter margins, better handoffs, and fewer "we can't catch up" projects, this episode is for you. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Chris, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Many contractors report that estimating is where they need the most support. From your perspective, how does better training change how commercial contractors price and plan their projects?
Well, I totally agree. Estimating, in my opinion, kind of in my experience as a general contractor for the last 25 years, the estimate is really where you make your margin and you kind of make your money in the estimate and then execute the project. So if that estimate starts out to be inaccurate, then that is going to continue throughout the project and just amplify. So I just think that the estimating is more of an art than a science. And so it's very important for companies to develop their estimator teams, to develop that talent, because you get better and better with estimating projects the more that you do those projects. And then you can lean more on that historical data. So being able to train somebody and give them industry and education and continuing education throughout their career with you as a firm is really critical to make sure that they are continuing to learn and be better estimators and get tighter margins and be able to work in a more competitive environment.
So we're familiar with that idea of art versus science when it comes to estimating. Why do you think people struggle with that framework and look at estimating more as a science than an art?
Well, I think it's because there's not a out-of-the-box solution for estimating. Estimating is a regional, sometimes even more of a local thing. So what works in New York City may not work in Miami, which may not work in Los Angeles or Houston. So every region, every city, every municipality is going to have its own challenges associated with estimating, its own differences in labor, differences in material costs. So that's what makes it very tricky, is it's hard to just have a blanket estimating solution for any firm. It's really, you have to have custom solutions for that particular team to understand what it is, what are their gaps in estimating, and then what programs can you put in place to help fill those gaps and make them better estimators. So I think that's why it's a little tricky to just have a blanket estimating program. It's really something that has to be specific per region. And then if you can get that level of specificity in a training program for estimators, to me, that's really the secret sauce for having a strong team.
It's interesting. One of the complaints that I hear often from estimators is that my company wants me to pump out a variety of estimates, and because of the volume that I look at, I can't do an accurate estimate or take the time to really put in a good number there. You have experience running a construction company. How do you balance the demands of winning work with the need for accurate estimates in a way that makes sense for the business?
Well, it's very tricky. There's no doubt, but I think it starts at the top. You have to make sure that you as the business owner, or even if you're just a top executive in a large firm, you have to make sure that you're going after the work that is in your sweet spot. You have to go after work that works for you. It's very difficult to stray into different areas and that you don't have any experience with and expect to have accurate estimates. So I would say starting with the work that you know and the work that you're good at, identify those markets, those types of projects. And then at that point, it is just a numbers game. You do have to put a lot of estimates on the street.
Yep.
The more estimates you have on the street, the better chance you get for winning more, having your win rates and being high and getting more projects. And then I would say on the flip side of that too, is know when enough is enough. Don't take on work for the sake of just, oh, this is another project. You have to make sure that you have, that you're staffed for it, that you're scaled for it, because sometimes too much can ruin your business, just like too little can ruin your business. So you have to be careful with that too.
Yeah, it's often said that the companies don't go out of business because of the projects they don't win. They go out of business because of the projects they do win.
100%. I've been guilty of that. I've taken work, and sometimes it's not even the project itself. Sometimes it's the project owner. Sometimes it's the client you're working with. And is this someone I really want to deal with? Maybe they just have chronic late pays. Maybe they don't have a good in the industry. They don't have a good reputation. You got to be careful with that too. So, and that's easier said than done. I mean, especially, back in the 2007, 2008, 2009, when I was doing projects in South Florida, that the margins there were non-existent. The economy had collapsed. You took whatever project you could take. So, and a lot of times you were working, actually paying the client to work because your margins were negative at that point. You were just trying to keep your crews busy. So I get it. It's hard, but when times are good, you can be a lot more selective. When times are really tough, sometimes you got to take on projects that you may not have taken in the past. But I think that just comes with, you got to just, if you know that and you can be proactive with that, then you can kind of manage expectations there.
Contractors often say that they struggle with pricing profitably in a market with fluctuating material costs. And you've alluded to that already. What are the biggest pitfalls you see in how firms approach estimating and pricing? And how could improved foundational knowledge help?
Well, I would say for price fluctuations, a lot of that starts in your contract. You have to have price escalation clauses in place. So now more than ever, it's critical that you have somebody, a board certified construction attorney who specializes in contract law, that they review your contracts that you're either having subs sign or that you're signing from the project owner, or a prime if you're a subcontractor. So really important to make sure that those price escalation clauses are really tight, because now you could have price increases within weeks of an estimate going out. And I would say too, you should also have firm deadlines on your estimate. They can't be open-ended. So make sure that the owner understands that this estimate is for a limited time only. And because of the price fluctuations, things could fluctuate pretty significantly. And that is the only way that you can protect yourself in that way. But I would also say that your estimators in a competitive environment, because even when times are good, you're not going to be the only person typically that is estimating a project for a potential project owner. So I think it's really important, though, that your estimator team understand, everyone be on the same page about what is acceptable in terms of our margins. What do we need to be able to function as a company? And then also have a little bit of room there for potential issues, contingencies within the project.
You spoke earlier about niche, and obviously it's important for companies to go after the right clients with the right projects in the right locations. Sometimes what companies struggle with when estimating is that they have more than one niche, and sometimes they carry over, let's say, overhead or pricing from one niche to another. And because of that, they inadvertently price themselves out of the market in that second niche. In your experience running a construction company, how do you make sure that estimators don't allow pricing from one niche to bleed over to the other?
Well, that just kind of that definitely starts with training. I think there has to be a really strong connection between your estimator, your estimating team, and the executive team that are managing the finances, managing those dollars. It's the estimators don't really know about the workings, necessarily the operations of the business. They're focused on costs, project costs, labor, material, all the things associated with that. To your point, pumping out a lot of different estimates because you need as many estimates on the street as you can get so that you can bring in, you can meet your quota for work. So you have to have that connection. So that could be weekly meetings with the teams, understanding just quick, real quick connects. It could be the executive team reviewing estimates to make sure that they're capturing the proper margins, the overhead requirements for that particular type of project. And I think too, there's going to be project types that you have really good margins, and there's going to be project types where your margins are very tight. Let's say a government contract might have very, very slim margins.
Yep.
But you're going to get paid, you're going to get the money over time versus something that may be a little bit of a higher margin type of project, but there might be some more uncertainty. It's not a guarantee that you're going to receive the money. So it's kind of a balancing act. Going back to that art versus science. This is why it's when you get a good estimator team, hang on to them. They're really gold.
How do you mitigate against poor handoffs between estimating and the project team? A lot of times, someone wins a project and then they don't really tee up the project team and explain to them why their number is their number and where there's opportunities perhaps for the project team to build more efficiently and capture some more margin. So in your experience, what's a good way to structure that handoff meeting?
Well, I would say it even starts before then, right? So early engagement, that's really the key. And you're starting to see that trend a little bit with larger firms is they're having their field staff, their field teams, their superintendents, their project managers being a little more involved and engaged in the very early stages of the estimating process for projects. And for me, there's two major reasons for that. One, I think it makes sense so that they understand the project before the handoff really, and so that they have a better understanding of the expectations and what they're working with. But also, I think a lot of the decisions, the field staff, superintendents, foremen, project managers, they are on the project. They are in the weeds. They see what's going on. They're the first level of defense, as it were, with the things that are going on in the project. And whereas an estimator may not step foot on a project, doesn't really understand those challenges, what's happening, doesn't get, a particular type of material might be hard to install, or a particular type of work may take longer, that we chronically underbid certain types of labor. Those are things that if you can have a nice, complete kind of connection between the field staff and the estimator team, again, on a weekly basis or however often makes sense for your firm, boy, you really get in front of a lot of those issues very early.
Did you ever have your estimators go out to the field to just kind of walk a project and see, what it looks like with it actually getting built?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I didn't have a huge team of estimators, but the estimator that I utilized was always had to go to the project site. And if he didn't necessarily go to the project site to see what we were working with, definitely we had a meeting about previous similar projects to understand how did we do on that project? Were we correct on our pricing with materials, with labor? Was our time correct? Did the schedule work? Were we delayed? What were the challenges that we saw? So sort of having that sort of post-project review and audit it's critical. And again, include the estimator in that, also include the field staff in it. That should be a whole team event so that everyone can kind of learn. Because again, you make your money when you deliver, when you hand that estimate over, everything's baked in right there. Yeah. So it starts right at that point, and now it's either you've made money or you've lost money. And boy, when you're losing money in the very beginning, you can't catch up.
All right, quick break to talk about my book, Construction Genius. This is what I want you to do. Go to Amazon, search for the book, read all of the 5-star reviews, because there's a ton of them. Over 50 to be precise. And the reason I want you to read them is because real people wrote those reviews who've actually read the book. And it'll give you an idea of why you should go and buy a copy right now on Amazon. And here's the deal. If you purchase 10 or more copies for your company, and then send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, I'll come in via Zoom and do a 1-hour Q&A and a bonus training session with your team at no charge. I normally charge $4,500 for an hour of my time. And again, for you, I'll do it at no charge if you buy 10 or more copies of my book. And the reason you should buy it is all in the title. It's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS, leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. So if you're in the construction industry, this book is for you. So you can get it on Amazon. You can also get it on Audible in the audio version as well, narrated by yours truly. And I know you'll really enjoy it. So go out and get the book. And now back to the interview.
It's interesting because you alluded there to the feedback that estimators crave from the field on how their number actually played out in real time. and on a real project. And so that's vital that we keep that communication going both ways.
Yeah, you got to close that feedback loop. And that really is all about communication, which is another thing that, wow, is really hard, the construction. So a lot of times one team's not talking to the other team. Leadership's very busy. They don't focus on communication, and you just end up so many problems. So having a good open communication system, making sure everyone can talk to each other, can communicate effectively with one another. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's so critical.
How long did it take you to figure that out when you were running your construction company?
Oh, man, when I started, we had over 10 projects in the first year, and it was a small team that I had. And I mean, I learned right out of the gate, because I think there's communication in two ways. One, communication with your team, which was the easy part for me because I knew them, right? They're my employees. We would talk all the time. But also communication with the client. That was another thing that I had to learn. I mean, there's going to be times when you just don't want to pick up that phone. You know there's a problem. Yep. You know it's not going to be a good conversation, but you have to pick up that phone and talk to them and communicate with your client and with the owners. Had I done that better in the early part of my career, I would have avoided so many headaches, because sometimes people just want to vent, just to tell you what's going on, what their problem is. And a lot of times you got to just sit there and take it and then communicate that solution back to them, work it out, and communicate that out to the broader team. And sometimes you have to learn from that. I've had instances where we've messed up. We made mistakes on the job site, and that's okay to do that. Now you got to go fix them and then try to remediate and mitigate it so that you don't make those mistakes again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always keep in mind this idea of pain and time as sort of an XY axis. And the more time goes by, the more pain increases. And so I need to be proactive. And then also the more money I lose. So I just need to be proactive in picking up that phone.
I love that. I got to see that graph. Yeah, that graph is probably the story of my professional construction career.
Yeah, I think it's a story of life, actually. When it comes to project scheduling, it's another area where firms say they need help. How do you see the connection between a solid estimate and a more realistic project schedule on commercial jobs?
Well, those two go hand in hand. And I got to say, I think one of the biggest challenges is not necessarily developing an estimate. That's one part of it, right? Sure. Or just on its own, developing a schedule. That's kind of another part. But for an estimator who can merge both things, because there's a cost management strategy and then there's an earned value management strategy. So if you have $1 million project and you're been paid, let's say $500,000. Well, are you 50% done with the project?
Right.
Are you 40% done with the project? Are you 60% done with the project? That is a real missing skill, is understanding these percentage completions and these value in place concepts. And let me tell you, who is keeping track of that is the architect who's approving your applications for payment. They know exactly how, the percentage of completion and the value of that. And so you have to be aligned there too. And I would say if you're kind of getting more granular into what is sort of missing, I think, and more broadly, is that skill set of understanding, yes, we know how to necessarily estimate this project, but can we develop a draw schedule that makes sense? Does the draw schedule that's presented to us make sense? That is something that in the long term will save you so much time and money if you can figure that out. And again, that goes back to historical experience, being on different projects and understanding that, man, we chronically underbilled this project. We were constantly financing this project up till the end. And then at the end, we ended up with a 5% margin that barely made this project worth it. You don't want to be in that position. So when that happens, you have to be able to go back and, again, closing that feedback loop, understanding why that happened, and then trying to mitigate that.
Do you often see that, though, not necessarily as an issue of estimating, but in terms of the project managers not really understanding this concept of earned value and having a strategy around there, and therefore they do get into that underbilled state?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the estimators would definitely argue that, hey, that's, I put together I gave you the number, y'all got to figure the rest out. And I get that. I totally understand that. I mean, for me, I wore a lot of different hats in my days. I would estimate the project, but I would also, as the estimator, I'm looking at the schedule to better understand what, if there's one provided, to better understand how I really need to price this project. How long is it going to, that's another thing, is what's the duration of this project? How long is it going to take? what are the potential penalties if we don't finish on in a particular period of time? So all that's part of the specifications and some of the conditions of the project. So, but the project manager, once that project is bought out and now we're getting to work, the project manager has to really understand, like they really have to understand that earned value and figure out and make sure that you don't want to be chronically behind in the project, because that's never, again, you can never catch up. And financing someone else's dream home is not where you want to be.
Think about the last time you promoted someone into a leadership role and it failed. Why did it fail? I can tell you one reason. People know how to build projects, but they don't know how to build and lead teams of people. Construction comes with its challenges that only insiders truly understand. Generic leadership training doesn't cut it. You need a program to train your leaders built specifically for construction professionals led by an industry expert. And my online course, The Shift, is exactly that course. It has 5 modules. It'll teach your people how to control their calendars and reduce stress and embrace chaos and accomplish their critical tasks. It will teach them the 3 essential messages they have to communicate every day in order to motivate and lead their team effectively. It'll show them how to build and lead a high-performing team, give them a framework for running effective meetings so they'll be able to solve problems in less than an hour, and also give them a higher perspective on their leadership that will enable them to work on the business and on their teams and not get stuck in the weeds micromanaging. So go out to my website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, read all about the course, and then enroll yourself and your leaders in the course, and I guarantee that it will transform your leadership. If it does not, you take the whole course and you didn't get benefit from it, you just send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, and I will cheerfully refund you 100% of your money. I'm really confident this course will transform your leadership. So again, go out to the website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, learn more about the course, and start taking it today.
Pivoting a little bit here, finding qualified labor is one of the top challenges contractors have, and it's proverbial. It's all throughout the industry. How does a deeper emphasis on training help companies build internal talent that improves the company across the board, as well as helping with that qualified labor?
Well, I think one of the things that I always tell the firms, because I help in workforce training with a lot of firms doing road work and bridge work and the government contract work, but one of the things I always tell the business owners is to love the one you're with. I mean, you've got team, you have a team there, and it's really the owner or the executive team's responsibility to identify your talent, identify those that are maybe potential leaders in a different vertical or in an existing vertical that they're going to move up in the company. I think it really starts with your existing staff and making them feel a part of the team, making them feel welcome, encouraging their professional development by giving them training, and maybe it's in leadership, maybe it's additional training in estimating, giving them additional certifications that they can be proud of and put on social media, and really to enhance their understanding of whatever their skill set is. So I think that's the first thing, is identify what you have on your team already. Now, if you need to expand out of that, then to me, I think finding really good talent, again, not necessarily the hard part. It's kind of difficult, but not necessarily the hard part. The hard part is keeping that talent. And so I think having a robust onboarding plan, understanding, properly training the new hires that you bring on, that I can't tell you how critical that is. That is so important, because then they feel like they're part of the family. They feel supported. They don't feel lost. And also they're going to be sort of molded in the way that you want them to be molded in order to execute whatever their role is. So that's how the advice I would give any company.
Okay. Going back to the estimating, it seems like that's an area where a lot of technology companies look to make improvements, because they actually think of it more as a science than an art, and in terms of spreadsheets and numbers and all that kind of stuff. And a bunch of different contractors are using construction management apps, and many are experimenting with AI. How do you see technology intersecting with the traditional skill of estimating And what should firms focus on to make that transition smoother?
Well, I think, first of all, AI is here, right? AI is happening. There's no stopping it. Construction has always, as an industry, has always been a slow adopter of technology, but they don't have a choice right now. And there's so many different solutions, estimating specifically, AI solutions that are coming on, scheduling solutions, there's plan reading solutions, across the gamut, any task within construction, but specific to estimating. What I like about the AI technologies that at least I've seen or sort of played with a little bit, they, for estimating, are really good at identifying potential errors. So they can look at a vast amount of historical data, which we used to have to do manually, right? And look at that data manually and go through and remember, oh, remember that project 2 years ago? Let's pull that file up. Well, AI does all that in a millisecond and can not only analyze that data set, but can also compare it to the existing data set and identify trends. That's really what AI is good at. It can't think on its own. It doesn't have the ability as a seasoned estimator to make judgment calls. It doesn't do that. Not yet, but it is really good at identifying data and identifying potential areas or gaps or risks within the estimate. So I think going back to construction not being an early adopter of technology, what I would have encouraged all the firms that we consult with up to now is AI is a very important piece. You're probably using it and don't even know it, but also don't think too big about AI. Let's pick one pain point. If it's estimating, let's pick one solution, identify a potential platform that might help us to be more efficient and more accurate in estimating specifically. Test that out, have a really good pilot program, test it, and then you can scale and grow. I think sometimes we try to solve every problem in our company with AI. We get a platform, it doesn't work because AI doesn't work that way. We get frustrated, we abandon it, and AI is terrible and we're never going to use AI again. That's not the case. The case is you have to start very small and then scale your way up.
And it's interesting, right? Because again, AI comes with so much hype, but your advice there is age old in terms of adopting any new technology in your organization. Start small, get the case study proved, start with those adopters who are willing for change, and then roll it out slowly across the organization. It's just basic blocking and tackling.
That's it. Yeah. And it's hard. But again, I think with technology, we have an impression of what it is sometimes, but it's not really that thing. So in AI's case, it's not the one solution solves every problem. And also AI has not been great so far with integration with existing systems. And I think that's something that over time will get better and better. So when you're adopting AI solutions, you want to make sure that it integrates with the systems that you might be using now. So if you're using Procore and you have an integration system, let's say like a Monday.com or some other workflow management or Primavera or whatever system you're working with, are these systems going to play well with each other? So adopting an AI technology takes research, takes time, some thought, and you want to make sure that you're, again, starting small so that you can find a solution that will work and then scale that solution up.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just so we've covered a lot here today. We've covered about knowing your niche. It's very important. The art and the science of estimating in terms of your local knowledge, dialing in legal language in contracts, getting clear deadlines into those contracts so that as pricing goes up and down, it's not killing you. Communication between the projects and project team and the estimating team. All of these things are tremendous takeaways. Chris, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your company and how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Houston, Texas. So I've went to college in San Antonio and moved about 25 years ago to South Florida, where I met my wife and started building here I started working for a developer for the first about 4 or 5 years of my time here, which was an amazing experience. I got to see all kinds of different types of projects, 6-story mid-rise, mixed use projects, new luxury home construction. We did commercial build outs and all kinds of renovations. It was a wonderful, tough, hard experience, but amazing. Started my own firm, Closing Builders, after that. So I got my license here in Florida as a certified general contractor. So did that for quite some time. And that's where I was again, did a lot of really cool projects, but sort of transitioned into more consulting and teaching. So the company I work with, we own 3 construction education brands. And I've just kind of fell in love with that. And now I just focus strictly on consulting with companies that, again, small businesses that want to thrive in construction. And that's what we do. We help them to get set up to be more efficient, to be better, and to win more work. And you can always reach out to me. My email is cclausing@ceihome.com. So you can always email me there, or even better, connect with me on LinkedIn, Chris Clausing, Clausing, and you'll find me on LinkedIn, and let's connect. And that's also a great place to reach me.
That's awesome. Yeah, and all those links will be in the show notes so that you can connect with Chris. Chris, really appreciate your time. Thanks for generously sharing your knowledge with the audience here today.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to my episode today with Chris. I found it really helpful and interesting. Feel free to connect with him wherever you might find him on LinkedIn or at his website. Show notes have all of the links. And of course, please give Construction Genius a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity, and to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.